I'll Google search for Spring Boot Initializer, and that's where we can start out. This actually creates a project for us. So there's a few choices to make. We'll use Maven, and we'll discuss what Maven is in a bit. We'll choose the Java language, and version, we'll just leave everything the same. I'm going to change the group to Sparko, my fictional company, and I'm going to change the artifact name to core. And demo project for Spring Boot, that's a good description, and then a package name of that. That's good. Java version 8, that's all good. Use the jar file. I'm not going to add dependencies. At this point, this is where for your specific application, you'd add dependencies to it. You can add those dependencies here or later. This time, I'm not going to add any dependencies. We'll look at the simplest possible project first. Generate. So there it is in the zip file. Once it's open, I'll extract it. And when the extraction is done, I'm going to copy this path name because I'm going to use it immediately. And I'm going to use it immediately in Eclipse. So I'm in a new workspace in Eclipse. And I'm going to import a Maven project. File, open, import. And here's where I pick Maven. Existing Maven project. Next. At this point, the directory that I've downloaded comes into play. It reads the directory. It's essentially saying I understand what to do. And we import this project into Eclipse. Next, we'll take a look at what was built for us. It actually takes a little bit to come fully into Eclipse. So let's talk about Maven and the POM XML, which works with Maven. So the POM XML is the configuration file for Maven. So Maven dependencies is and these are from that simple Spring Boot project. These are the dependencies that we had. And when this project was built, from the dependencies, these jar files were actually downloaded from a site on the internet, from a repository on the internet. And Maven is directing that process based on the configuration file that's found in the POM XML. So the POM XML is configuration for what Maven has done. So you list dependencies here. Even outside of Spring Boot, this is not a unique concept of Spring Boot. Maven is a separate thing. It's a configuration manager, and we chose Maven. Gradle's another configuration manager that was also in the Spring Boot Initializer, if you recall that. We already have Maven with our tool set for Java EE, so we're going to use that. Here's the configuration, and in that configuration, let's say you wanted to add a new dependency, and that is a new library that your application is going to use, this is where you'd use it. This is where you'd define it, and then Maven would manage the download of that jar file, which is a compressed Java source library. In this XML, you can see some of the settings that we did back when we were in the Spring Boot Initializer. On that web page, the group ID, the artifact ID, version, and name, all that was set there. This is important. The parent. This is the concept of a super POM, and to get the POM.xml is just a small version of the POM file that you as the developer sees, and this is where you'd work. The effective POM here is the super POM plus the POM XML together. And in here, you can really see what Spring Boot does, and that is actually specify these versions. Well, where does that super POM information come from? It comes from these settings here. So that essentially makes the super POM something that's defined on the internet and pulled down and made part of this project, and that's how Spring Boot manages all the library versions here that you see in the effective POM. We don't express them here, and normally if you're in a project, by the way, you would express the version number of the library of the dependency that you are using right in here. Spring Boot takes that away from us, as we've stated, so it would actually flag that as an error if you start specifying a version number in here. It takes control of the exact version of the dependencies you're going to use. So that's it for the Maven and its dependencies. Later on, we'll visit this as we add dependencies to our project. We'll revisit this file and add the dependencies here. Next, we'll take a look at the Java code that was generated by this project.